Don't watch. Just don't watch the camera.
And speak from like right here so she can see you. Okay. And say your name first.
Hi, my name's Haley. Haley's wrong, in case you're wondering. Anyways, I'll get started now. Okay, honorable panel. Oh, that's right. Okay, in the status quo, drugs often take many months and often years to make it onto the market, and these drugs could potentially be saving lives. On opening government, we want to make sure that these life-saving drugs can reach citizens as soon as possible. So for a quick model, this motion primarily goes to Western liberal democracies, and within this motion, we just want to take away the second step about testing for effectiveness, but keep the step of testing for safety. So this brings me into our first main point, which is that the status quo hinders pharmaceutical research. So the FDA in specific has a really bad reputation for having a large bureaucracy and preventing a lot of things from reaching the market in time, especially when compared to like other democracies in Europe, which aren't necessarily in the EU, but specifically compared to the EMA, the FDA has like a much worse reputation for hindering pharmaceuticals in the sense that oftentimes things that are like known to work and that have been used in experimental treatments aren't allowed onto the market because they haven't reached the final step. And oftentimes these drugs are critical in saving lives. So an example is like cancer research. A lot of like things that could be helping people like in the present and like right now can't be released because they haven't, even if they're like known as being safe, they haven't been tested as being effective. And often like on opening gov, we believe that this is really bad because a lot of people who are in these positions where they need drugs like right now, where they like desperately need them to save their lives, don't really have a lot of other options. So to like increase access to certain drugs by like skipping the step for effectiveness would allow us to just have more options on the market. And the effectiveness in general just like takes so much time, and it would cut down a lot of the time that we need to bring things onto the market and make it more like efficient and more effective. So our second point is that while governments are responsible for the health and safety of citizens, they should not interfere with consumer choices. So because we're talking about Western liberal democracies, governments do have a large responsibility to their citizens in ensuring that people are safe and that they're healthy and that the things that are reaching them won't harm them. But they do not have the responsibility, nor should they have any say, particularly within consumer choices, because consumers should be allowed to have as many of their own options as they want without being too restricted. So if consumers have a wide range of options, then they can sort of determine for themselves what's best for them, and it shouldn't be left. Yes, man.
Do consumers have the medical knowledge required to determine what's the best choice for them with these drugs?
Certain consumers do, but it should also be left to the individual to do that sort of research, and people have a personal responsibility to find these things out, and they shouldn't blindly assume that other people know what's best for them, and by blindly assuming that the government knows what's best for them, that takes away their own degree of autonomy. Anyways, moving on. So by restricting choices, like consumers just have less say in their own individual autonomy, and the government shouldn't interfere in it because this is a Western liberal democracy and people need to ultimately have their own say. Furthermore, like sort of an extension of this point is that effectiveness can be taken care of like by the market, just by like the basic workings of the market, whereas safety can't necessarily, I mean it can, but not to the same extent. So if something isn't effective and it's on the market and people are taking it and they find out that it's not working, then they'll stop using it, and eventually other companies will come out with something better and they'll come out with a new drug, and that will sort of develop on its own. And so that can be taken care of in the free market, and it doesn't have to like go to the government, and that saves the government from having to like do all this work, which would potentially be happening already. In conclusion, we on Open and Gov believe that safety is important when testing for drugs, and that it can be extremely helpful. And while effectiveness is an important factor in using drugs and like determining how drugs work, it shouldn't be left to the role of the government.
Free market.
Free market.
No.
Is everyone ready? Is it actually recording this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can talk if you want, but
It's green up top, so I assume it's recording.
No, it could just
that's
be
what happened last time, though.